So there's a trap inside some of the most popular income ETFs right now, and most people don't see it until they've been sitting on the position for 2 or 3 years, right? Let's say you buy a fund, 10% yield, the distributions arrive every month. You feel like the strategy is working, right? And then one day you pull up the chart and realize the share price has drifted down 18% since you bought it, right? The income you collected barely covered the loss of the principal that you didn't realize was even happening. That's NAV erosion, and it's the silent killer of income ETF strategies that nobody really talks about until after the damage is already done. So NAV stands for net asset value, the per share value of everything the fund holds. When you buy an ETF, you're buying a slice of the portfolio, right? The price you pay reflects what the portfolio is worth, okay? NAV erosion happens when a fund consistently distributes more than it actually earns. The share price gradually declines over time, not because of market conditions, but because the fund is returning your own capital to you dressed up as income. So here's the mechanics. Let's talk about it. Every covered call ETF generates income in 2 ways, right? Dividends from the stocks, obviously, that it holds, and then the premiums from the options, right? It sells, right? When those 2 sources cover the distribution, the NAV holds, right? But when the distribution exceeds what the fund actually earned, because volatility was low, let's say, because premiums compressed, option strategy, let's say their option strategy was too aggressive, the shortfall comes out of the fund's asset base, right? The share price starts to drift lower. The insidious part is that this doesn't look like a loss in the short run. It doesn't. The distributions, they keep hitting your account. The yield looks high, but you're slowly eating your own principal and you don't even realize it because the headline yield is calculated on the current share price, right? Which is also falling. The yield can look stable even as the account value underneath it continues to shrink. So here's the framework that I use to evaluate any high yield income fund before I decide on holding it. I look at total return, not just yield. Total return is price appreciation plus distributions reinvested. A fund that yields 11% but whose share price has declined 8% over 3 years has a total return of roughly 3% annualized. That's not an income fund. That is literally a slow capital liquidation dressed in a monthly distribution language. The test I run is this. If someone had invested 100 grand and reinvested every single distribution, what would the account be worth today? If the answer is meaningfully less than 100,000 adjusted for inflation, or even less than the starting value, the fund is eroding its own foundation, okay? The second thing that I look for is the coverage ratio, whether the fund's actual earnings cover its distribution. This data isn't always easy to find either, but the return of capital figures in the fund's annual tax documentation gives you a signal. Return of capital distributions reduce your cost basis rather than, representing, earned income. A fund that distributes mostly ROC is essentially returning your own money to you each month, okay? So in the right tax situation, that for sure can be useful, but it's not the same as earning income. Now let's talk about QYLD, the cleanest example of what to avoid, okay? And I want to start with a fund that I don't hold anymore because the contrast this teaches the concept the fastest. So QYLD sells covered calls on 100% of its NASDAQ 100 exposure. That full coverage is what generates that high yield, historically 10 to 12%. But selling calls on your entire portfolio means you surrender nearly all of the upside when the market starts to rally, right? The fund collects premium, but it can't participate in appreciation. In a rising market, the NAV starts to stagnate or decline because the options cap the gains while expenses and distributions, they're going out regardless, right? Over a 5-year period, that included significant NASDAQ appreciation, QYLD's share price declined meaningfully while the index itself gained substantially. Investors collected distributions but ended up with a smaller asset base than what they had started with. The yield was real for sure, but the total outcome was not what they expected. Let's talk about QQQI. This solves a lot of the problems. QQQI is a different kind of fund. It holds all 100 NASDAQ stocks, right, passively, just like QQQ, but it only sells covered calls on 60 to 80% of the portfolio. The partial coverage preserves upside participation for the remaining portion. When the NASDAQ rallies, QQQI captures some of that appreciation while still generating meaningful premium income. The result is a fund that has maintained its NAV more effectively than full coverage alternatives while delivering a yield still in that 10 to 12% range, right? The Section 1256 tax treatment on the index options is an added structural advantage for taxable account holders as well. But the core NAV stability comes from the partial coverage design, not the tax treatment, all right? And the principle here is this: how much of the portfolio you cap matters as much as the premium that you actually collect. Now, we got to talk about JEPI and JEPQ, active stock selection and stabilization, right? They take a different approach to the same problem. Instead of passive index exposure with a partial overlay, they use active stock selection to tilt the equity toward a lower volatility, higher quality names. That's why I really like them. And then they generate income through ELNs, the equity linked notes on top of those positions, right? So the lower volatility equity book underneath means that in market drawdowns, the portfolio loses a lot less than a pure index exposure, right? That matters for NAV because covered call premiums don't fully offset equity losses in a sharp sell-off, but a lower volatility book starts from a more stable position. JEPI has maintained NAV reasonably well through multiple market cycles, literally since its 2022 launch, including the 22 bear market, where many pure index covered call funds, they struggled significantly. The trade-off is that in a strong bull market though, JEPI is going to lag behind passive index funds because of active management misses, some high-flying names, and obviously options cap further upside. We know that with the covered calls. And for an income-focused portfolio, that trade-off is often acceptable, at least for me. You're not trying to beat QQQ. You're trying to generate consistent income without destroying the capital base that actually produces it for you. Now, SCHD, right? We all love SCHD. Let's talk about how this one works here, right? Now, obviously, SCHD doesn't use an options overlay at all, which gives a completely different NAV dynamic. Its distributions are funded entirely by dividends from its holdings, meaning the income is directly tied to what the underlying businesses earn and choose to actually distribute. So, because SCHD's reconstitution process, it always rotates towards, very financially healthy companies with strong cash flows. The dividend coverage ratio within the fund tends to be pretty high. Companies are paying dividends out of their earnings, not like financial engineering, right? That structural soundness means that SHD's NAV has historically appreciated over time while the dividend itself has grown, right? The exact opposite of erosion, right? The yield obviously is lower, 3.5%, but the total return picture is way more durable. You're not borrowing from your own capital to fund distributions. You're literally collecting what the underlying businesses actually earn. Look, NAV erosion is not inevitable in income ETFs. It's a function of the fund's design. Specifically, it happens when a fund distributes more than it earns, through very aggressive options coverage ratios, unsustainable payout ratios in low volatility environments, or distributions that aren't backed up by actual earned income. All right. And the way to protect yourself is to evaluate funds from a total return rather than headline yield. A 12% yield on a fund whose NAV declines 8% annually is 4% total return. And you're slowly liquidating your own capital to generate that income. Okay. A 4% yield on a fund whose NAV holds steady and grows 6% annually, is a 10% total return with intact capital base. The practical implication for a portfolio construction is this: use high yield options based ETFs like QQQI, JEPI, and JEPQ for their income generation characteristics, but monitor that total return. Don't just be blinded by the distribution amounts. When a fund's NAV is consistently declining outside the broad market drawdowns, that's the signal that the distribution isn't fully covered by the earned income. SCHD, DGRO, and similar dividend growth funds serve a totally different role, right? They build the foundation with a stable or appreciating NAV, lower current yield, and growing distributions over time together. And these two categories of funds can provide both current income and obviously that long-term capital preservation, which is a lot more durable architecture than trying to maximize the yield at the expense of your base, right? So here's how I personally personally do all this stuff in my portfolios. I obviously hold JEPI and JEPQ for monthly income. I monitor their total return periodically, not just the distributions, okay? And to make sure the capital base is always holding up, I also hold SCHD as a long-term dividend growth anchor, specifically because its NAV has historically always appreciated over time rather than eroded. But what I don't do is chase the highest available yield without understanding where that yield's coming from. A 14% yield on a fund that's been losing a 1% of NAV per month is not a strategy. It's a slow exit literally from your own investment. The question I ask before adding any income position is very simple. Can this fund sustain its distribution from what it actually earns? If the answer requires assumptions about favorable volatility or aggressive coverage ratios, I size the position accordingly. Very small, not large, if not even touching it. And I got two questions for you guys in the comments. So number one, have you ever held a high yield income ETF and only realized the NAV had been declining when you pulled up the long-term chart? What did you do when you saw that? I know I made that mistake with QYLD a long time ago. And number two, how are you currently thinking about the balance between high yield income ETFs and dividend growth funds in your portfolio? Drop those comments down below. These are the conversations I believe, and they're so good in the comments, and they are always worth having. And also, if you want to take your education a lot further, I have a 90-minute workshop I want to invite you to. Click the first link down below in the description of today's video. Also in the description, there's a bunch of other free resources for you guys to check out to take your education a lot further. My free trade log templates, all my calculators, all that good stuff to help you in your income investing journey. So go ahead and head to that description. Remember guys, sell options, collect premiums, repeat. I'll see y'all tomorrow.